Hello and welcome to the eighth house. I'm Lance, and today I want to talk to you about the new moon in Leo, which culminates, at least here in the States, in the wee hours of the morning on Sunday, August 8th. Yeah, I guess first, if you came here from TikTok, hi. If you randomly found me on YouTube, that's awesome. Thank you for watching. And I do most of my content over on TikTok. So if you're on there, feel free to follow me. But we're going to go through the actual transit for the new moon, as well as some of the preceding transits and, what that means for you based on your rising sign. Yeah, before we get into the new moon itself, I do want to revisit some of the more recent transits that have culminated within the past week or so since the full moon in Aquarius at the end of July. So starting with toward the end of July, between about the 28th and 29th, we actually had retrograde Jupiter backtracked its way into Aquarius, joining Saturn, the ruler of the sign, and ending its little stint through its own home sign of Pisces until the end of the year. So that is like an ultimate backdrop for everything, at least from my point of view. It is unfinished business that Jupiter had in Aquarius, and it will call us to rethink our approaches to certain areas in our life. And we'll talk about that more in depth when we get to the rising signs. Between the 29th and the 30th of July, roundabouts, we had Mars make its way into Virgo. Now, it moved to be co-present with Venus, who is in its fall, but it will remain in Virgo until about the middle of September. And particularly with the two of them being there, Venus will actually leave a little bit later this month, like next weekish, within the next 2 weeks. And both of them coming together is sort of a reinvigoration, a renewed sense of purpose in the area where Virgo falls in your chart. Again, we'll talk about that more in a bit. And yeah, so at the same time as both of those, what we had is Mercury popping into Leo. Now, becoming co-present with the sun, it was co-present with Mars for a little bit before Mars hopped over, but definitely becoming co-present with the sun, the sign's ruler. It is a big enlivening. It's a big boost to wherever Leo falls in your chart. The natural vibrancy and creativity of that sign, particularly with the sun there, is just even more boosted by Mercury's presence in the same sign. And it could have led to wanting to share your opinions more openly. It could also have instilled a conscious sense of purpose or led you to realize a more conscious sense of purpose. Again, particularly for wherever Leo falls in your chart. The kind of more negative side of that, because the sun, even though the sun is really happy, we have a lot of harsh transits to it at this time, which again, we will definitely get into. But it could make us a bit more self-centered and subjectively focused on ourselves. And it can overstimulate the mind particularly when concerned about ourselves and what we're doing, what we've got going on. And this can lead to certain outbursts. And that's, if it didn't affect you that much, it didn't affect you that much, but that is a possible indication. Now, Mercury leaves Leo actually just a few days after the new moon, and the sun will leave towards the end of the month, marking the end of Leo season. In fact, when we have our next full moon, which is a little bit later in August, it will be an actual blue moon, the second full moon in Aquarius during this Leo season. And then literally within 7 hours of that, the sun hops over into Virgo. We can talk more about that when the full moon gets here. But the entire month of, or the entire first week of August was marked by, I think we can get it here, by these interactions here. Very intense. If you pay attention to transits, then you pretty much already know, or if you follow me on TikTok, you probably already know. But Mercury and the Sun tag teamed a T-square formation opposing retrograde Saturn in Aquarius and squaring Uranus in Taurus, while Uranus and Saturn were within a square with each other. This is a high tension transit. This aspect pattern is very indicative of high tensions. So especially if it's falling in your angular houses, which we will talk about, you likely did not have a good first week of August. And this is actually a revisit of a similar T-square series with retrograde Saturn and Uranus as well, but Venus and Mars did it at the beginning of July. So the first week of July leading up to the Cancer new moon, which was on the 9th, and then this T-square series leading up to this new moon on August 8th. If you had particularly rough weeks for those periods of time, this is likely the cause, or at least the underpinning of it all. But in general, those T-squares likely combined to make you feel as though you are between two paradigms of knowledge, almost between two completely differing ideologies, two different choices. It is a very big choice that you were confronted with in one way or another. Especially with Uranus and Saturn having their square interaction, the conflicting ideologies were probably between a more conservative and a more liberal sense of action and thinking. And that is in a spiritual sense, not a political sense. But yeah, there's a lot to do with the potential rejection of new information, especially if it doesn't fit an already established way of thinking or belief system. On the other hand, you could have wholeheartedly embraced new information despite how it fit with your preconceived notions of how the world works. There's also the potential for completely doing away with a big part of your life or a particular system that you were involved in without having something, a replacement ready to take the stage. But during the reign of the T-squares, we also had the trine from Venus and Virgo to Uranus in Taurus, which gave us a little bit of outlet for all of that tension. And that likely manifested as some sort of relationship breakthrough in relationships of some kind, or in the area of romance, possibly financially, but also more likely aesthetically. We could have, done something different to our hair to reflect our inner turmoil, that kind of indication. But, and finally, right before the new moon, we actually had the moon at the tail end of Cancer opposing Pluto in Capricorn. Now, this normally I wouldn't put as much emphasis on it, but it is the moon's final real transit before the new moon culminates. And it's heavy because, you know, Pluto's not trivial. This likely manifested as emotional outbursts due to some sort of trauma or loss of control or fear of loss of control in a certain area of your life, again, dictated by where Cancer and Capricorn land in your chart. And we will talk about all of that. But essentially, the past week and a half of transits have really set the stage for potentially life-changing decisions that can completely derail or re-rail the track that one person's life is on. And the new moon, I believe, encapsulates that extraordinarily accurately. So the new moon is, of course, in Leo. Right down here, if I can get a hold on the buttons, that'd be great. The new moon is in Leo. It does culminate in the wee hours of the 8th of August, at least over here in the States, and it is still square Uranus. So that will still be a recurring theme. Now, the actual oppositions to Saturn will have separated by that time. As you can see, they're starting to wane here, but we also have this very interesting interaction, and it's called an easy opposition, and I'll get into what that means. But Venus in Virgo is opposing retrograde Neptune in Pisces, which again we can talk about, but that's going to be romantic idealism, possibly romantic obsession as well. Now it can go the other way and have more like, healing or therapeutic aspects to a relationship. But the relative ease of it, if you can call it that, actually comes from Pluto in Capricorn, where there is dealing with themes of control, fear, and even obsession to a certain degree. It's something being unearthed. So there could be a reconnection to what your definition of love is in general. Or it could be much more not fun or not positive. But at the same time, we have Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and even Saturn at the time of the new moon will have no exact aspects to them. So it's very interesting because the planets that rule over our thoughts and words, our drives and passions, our senses of abundance, as well as restriction, are all up in the air and trying to find their place. And that seems like a lot. And it is, but we'll talk about that. But where does that leave us? You know, we've got the new moon with the square, the easy opposition, but that's almost all that we have at the time of this culmination. But that leaves us with a general vitality and creative originality, given Mercury in Leo, as well as the new moon itself is imparting a sort of slightly more self-centered, creative and original spirit, and it is being squared Uranus. So there is a bit of warning that I need to give surrounding manic hyperactivity, impulsivity, as well as obstinacy and not really wanting to cooperate or compromise with people. Um, as I said before, the easy opposition between Venus, Neptune, and Pluto does impart a sense of romantic idealism, which can be very nice. But if you tap too far into it, you do expose yourself to the possibility of, obsessing and the more negative indications of idealism. Additionally, again, with Mercury in Leo, we're left with very fun and creative ideas, vibrant ways of thinking and speaking. The Mars in Virgo leaves us, even though it's not being commanded or helped out by anything in particular, it does leave us with the drive to put in consistent effort towards something rather than explosive creativity from the mutable Earth sign. As well as with the two giants in Aquarius, there's an air of being thankful, but not complacent. Like, yes, I am very glad for what I have, but how can I fix what needs to be fixed? And so we'll talk about all of that for each of the rising signs. As you can tell, this is not going to be a terribly short video, but timestamps are in the description for the different rising signs once we get through this introductory material. I also want to talk about how the Aquarius full moon at the end of July was concerned with dismantling systems and structures for updates. That is a very like Jupiter revisiting as well, that kind of signification. This Leo new moon, we are still highlighting those problems in those areas of life that we're trying to update. But this is a time for contemplation. It's not so much time to, tear down the walls or anything like that. It's, we're contemplating how to deconstruct the house without making it fall down. And that's kind of where we're at. The blue moon that's coming up toward the end of August, which is also in Aquarius, we will talk about in much more detail at that point. But just to have something to look forward to and that show the different stages, the blue moon is going to be more concerned with showing us potential workarounds, maybe even solutions to the problems that we're facing. But as I like to say, luck favors the prepared, and it's always better to start doing some of the work beforehand. So as we go through the rest of August, trying to redefine everything for ourselves, let's make sure we're being kind to ourselves and others, because we're all just trying to reconnect with, rediscover what it is we want, think, believe, and don't, frankly. Yeah, let's move into the rising sign horoscopes. So I'm going to put Aries on the ascendant. Now, Aries, for the remainder of the year, with your two giants in your 11th house, the systems that you are encouraged to revisit and potentially update includes your approaches to friendships, communities, and alliances, as well as your ideals in life. This could it could behoove you to come up with a better vetting process for friends, as well as allies, to be a bit more discerning when it comes to who you let within your circle. Or it could just be time to, weed out some of the frenemies that have been plaguing you. Until mid-September, with Mars and Venus in Virgo, you're undergoing a reinvigoration connected to your health and daily routines. It's a great time to start a new diet, get into the gym, or pick up any sort of new workout regimen. So that's all really good until the start of Virgo season, with the sun in Leo and then Mercury making the bridge between Leo and Virgo. But really, for the rest of the month, you will likely feel an abundance of creativity. This is very creative energy that you have going on in your fifth house right now. A need to have fun and a need to reconnect with your inner child, or have children, or reconnect with your children if you have them. There could also be a certain flavor of self-centeredness that's going around. Obstinacy is a thing. I'm seeing the possibility of a mentality of my way or the highway, which isn't healthy or good for friendships. Uh, so make sure you're keeping an open mind, especially heading through the rest of the month into Virgo season. Now, the opposing dichotomies that were highlighted during the T-square series this month was that of your selfish creativity, or at least slightly more selfish creativity and childlike fun, versus a more altruistic and humanitarian view, specifically of community and alliance. In short, while you are feeling all of this creative energy just swirling around you, you are also trying to figure out how you fit into society and how society welcomes the parts of you that you are rediscovering or discovering for the first time at this time. The breakthrough, courtesy of Uranus in Taurus in your second house, comes from your sense of self-worth, self-esteem, your general material resources, as well, which includes your finances. And it was strengthened by the trine to Venus in Virgo in the 6th. So it's also being strengthened by that reinvigoration, revisitation of your health and daily habits. So this could have manifested as, picking up a completely different wardrobe or hairstyle, just, any small change that you could have done aesthetically to represent the turmoil that you were experiencing on the inside and cope with it while you were trying to work through it. It could have also manifested in a more personal way. I would argue that 7th house topics do also tend to fall into the 11th house, being interpersonal relationships, things of that nature. So a new approach to relationships of all kinds may have developed. You're figuring out what's internally going on with yourself. So it's completely natural to want to almost from the ground up reinvent how you interact with other people. Now, the last days before the new moon, we had the opposition from the moon in Cancer to Pluto. So the interactions between your 4th and 10th house, these are angular houses. So it would not surprise me if this even fleeting transit hits you really hard for, a day or so. But you likely experience some intense emotional flare-ups centered around home and family, particularly involving your mother, Cancer, moon in Cancer in the 4th. With the underpinning of it all being some sort of outside influence, something about your public life and your career. It's possible that family secrets got let out of the bag and made their way out into the public, or that there was a great struggle going on to sort of keep that from happening. But either way, like I said, the new moon itself marks the time for you to contemplate all of that creative expression, all of that creativity, all of that childlike wonder, how you spend your free time, and even your casual and sexual relationships. This deep thought process could present as a strengthening of the creativity and expressiveness. However, it can mean that you have withdrawn a bit too much and dipped into a sense of childish obstinacy that usually comes with being power drunk. That's a very powerful new moon in Leo signification, particularly close to Mercury. Just being drunk with power, all of these personal planets all in the same place. But the square to Uranus over here puts the contemplation square in, it puts in the way of the contemplation. The long time coming, because Uranus is an outer planet, journey of self-discovery and financial or resource reinvention. I'd say that if your financial situation is secure, and if you are secure in who you are and what you stand for, you probably won't feel this too terribly much. However, if you are not financially stable, or if you are not too sure of yourself and where you are and what you stand for, you are much more likely to exhibit the negative indications for the new moon, especially square Uranus. So watch out, stay aware of where your mind attempts to lead you. and the new moon significations will last pretty much until the full moon. Additionally, with the easy opposition between Venus and Neptune, with Pluto interacting as well, this is a strong period for intense dreams. You could also engage with self-destructive, or otherwise harmful methods of escapism, specifically due to some traumas. Either they are being unearthed and you're trying to escape them, or you are escaping in hopes that they won't rise up. However, with the grounding from Pluto in the 10th, there is the possibility of using these intense dreams or using more potentially therapeutic forms of escapism to actually process through those traumas and process through those fears. Something that comes to mind is something along the lines of like hypnotherapy. But yeah, walking through that. Let's move on now to Taurus Rising. Excuse me. So Taurus for the remainder of the year. Actually, before I even start that, I'm sorry. All of the fixed signs have been hit really hard recently. You are no exception. The systems that you're invited to reapproach and redefine have to do with your public life, how you present yourself to the world and other people, and your career. This could include crises or revelations surrounding a previously chosen career path. So a career change, especially a massive one, is possible. You could reinvent how you present yourself and interact with the outside world at large. And you could also just generally redefine what parts of your life you are comfortable sharing with the public. Now, until mid-September, let me see, I'll get all this together. Until mid-September, you're undergoing a reinvigoration of how you express yourself, where Aries was having all of the new moon activity in the 5th house. You're having the Mars-Venus interaction in your 5th house. So this is how you express yourself, how you spend your free time, romance and sex, and possibly attitudes towards children, yours or anyone else's. It is likely with Mars being there that you will experience a heightened sense of competitiveness, which could be playful and could be not. So be sure that you're exercising that in creative ways. You know, play games with family or friends, or even yourself. You know, a good video game is nothing to snuff at. And in general, reconnect with your inner child and just enjoy life to the fullest extent that you can for the next month or so. Until the start of Virgo season, we have an enlivening of thoughts and an increase in volume when it comes to creative expression and feelings surrounding the family and the home, your private life. This could particularly focus on your father, given the sun's presence in the 4th house here, but it doesn't have to. You could feel as though you want to reconnect with an estranged father or strengthen a relationship you already have. You could possibly begin thinking about your future family and, you know, what you want that to look like, including your home. Whether these thoughts and speech, particularly of your father, are positive or negative subjectively to you is entirely up to you. You know, it depends on your actual relationship with whatever you're thinking about. The dichotomy produced from the T-squares, or indicated from the T-squares, was that of private life versus the public life. Again, hitting on angular houses, this is not easy. This is your private life, your home, your family, versus your public life, how you present yourself to the world, your career, public perception, all of that. You possibly, there was some family or personal business that got out into the public. So there was, natural clashing between those two areas. Or you could have just generally struggled to maintain a work-life balance over the past week specifically, but even, a little bit before and a little bit after. The breakthrough from Uranus comes from your first house of the self, your sense of identity and purpose, and it's being strengthened by that reinvigoration of your creativity, expressing yourself, enjoying life. The interesting thing about having Uranus in the first house is specifically when you're confronted with a new problem, however you would normally go about that, it's probably not happening. Uranus loves to take whatever the status quo is and flip it completely upside down. So it's very interesting. If you tend to be very family oriented, this struggle, you probably sided with career, and vice versa. But if this struggle is still going on, I do suggest refraining from any hasty or rash decisions. Instead, make sure you're taking the proper time away from the situation to try and clear your head. And again, you're trying to enjoy life. So allow yourself to express tension and express that stress through some sort of creative or artistic medium, playing a game, things of anything like that. With the Moon-Pluto opposition along Cancer and Capricorn, this is hitting your 3rd and 9th houses. You likely experienced intense emotional flare-ups surrounding honestly, probably a growing sense of restriction. A cabin fever style outburst is what I'm seeing, particularly with the pandemic still active and different variants now running amok. It is possible. In fact, when Jupiter went back into Aquarius, we, at least in the States, had more mask mandates come back, but there's definitely a growing sense of constriction. The community that was already small is seemingly getting smaller by the day. And within the last couple of days, it likely got to you, and that's okay. But the new moon itself, as we were discussing, definitely marks a time for you to really contemplate your home, your family, and your private life, specifically as it relates to your father or a father figure, some sort of authority figure within the home. But take this time to really consider what you want out of and for your family, birth chosen or otherwise, as well as what is and isn't working within the current living environment that you have. If possible, you may want to involve your father in the process, Sun in the 4th, possibly even your mother, but relying heavily on your parents for support, for advice, things of that nature. The square to Uranus is putting this kind of at odds with this journey of self-discovery, which makes sense. As you are reinventing yourself, rediscovering yourself, it's completely natural to kind of want to leave everything behind. Like, that was the old me. I don't want that anymore. It's entirely possible that revelations about the family will also make themselves known, which probably won't go over too well, especially relating to the father or father figure, but they don't have to. But it is possible over the next couple of weeks with the Venus-Neptune interaction here that you could be put in a position where you may confuse intense or strong platonic feelings for something else. That is definitely something that I'm seeing, the sort of mingling between romance and sex and friendships and communities. Otherwise, you could initiate some sort of forbidden or taboo love affair But I'm also seeing the potential for a them versus us sort of mentality, especially when it comes to children. And especially if you are a parent yourself. Like if you're not a parent, you probably won't feel that. But this is also a fairly good time for experimenting in the bedroom. So there's also that. But there's the overall sense that I'm getting is losing yourself in the thrill of it all, whatever that might mean for you. And with the interaction with Pluto from Capricorn in the 9th, the recontextualization of yourself and your reality will probably be immensely helpful. So as you start to feel yourself getting lost, as you start to lose touch with the actual reality of a situation, remind yourself of your place in the world, like at large and within your current reality, not being swept up with emotion, but use that logical brain to like, no, this is where I am, this is what's going on. And that could be enough to pull you back down to earth, so to speak. Moving on now to Gemini risings. So my lovely Geminis, for the rest of the year, you are being invited to revisit and update your understandings of the larger picture in the world at large. This could include questioning your beliefs, undergoing a spiritual awakening, considering prospects in higher education, starting or restarting, going for a higher degree, and just generally considering where your place is and what your purpose is in life in the context of the world at large. Until mid-September, we have this reinvigoration of efforts within the house, home, and family, the private life. This could present as beginning to lay plans toward establishing your own house and home, strongly considering reconnecting or strengthening an existing connection with your parents. Particularly, I see the theme of coming together in unity, particularly for a cause, especially with Venus also there. So that could be quite interesting. Until the start of Virgo season, we have this enlivening, this boost to your already generally quick mind, which is very interesting. Mental stimulation is the name of the game here, particularly when it comes to creativity and in the spirit of synthesis, making something, putting something together. This could present as a strengthening contact with siblings, which is a third house topic, as well as extended family members. Increased short-term or short-distance travel, though with everything still going on, I don't know if that's wise. In general, though, the main indications are a quickening of your mental processing and having big creative ideas and honestly probably talking a lot. But the dichotomy that was presented with the T-square series was that of the outside world versus your immediate environment. A mentality centered around them versus us, and smaller, closed mind thinking versus larger, more open mind thinking. Honestly, I find it extremely fitting that this opposition is hitting within your mental houses, because you're pretty much all mental anyway. But definitely struggling to find your place within your family dynamic, as well as the world at large, or maybe not even your family dynamic, but the immediate community, whatever that means for you. That was likely the struggle that you felt over the past couple weeks and heading into probably the next week or so. The breakthrough comes from Uranus in Taurus in your 12th house. This talks about mental health, potential engagement with escapist techniques and escapist behaviors, as well as your relationship with institutions, whether they be societal or physical. And it's being strengthened by that reinvigoration of efforts within the home, within your private life, and within your family. Remember with Uranus in general, whatever we used to do, that's probably not what we're doing this time. So I'm getting the sense that the approach to the problem was to find alternative questions, not necessarily answers, but in asking another question, you kind of implied the answer in sort of a platonic kind of way. So like if the question being posed by the opposition is them or us, your response could have been, what about all? What about we? Similarly, if the struggle is between a closed mind and an open mind, you're more likely to have a more inclusive opinion rather than relying on this false dilemma that was set up. So indirectly finding answers to those questions, but having it more than likely come out in a way that's not like, no, this is the answer, but more so, kind of packaging it to give it to somebody else. In general, getting away from it all, including healthy forms of escapism, which could allow you to do some of that private soul searching that you're needing at this time, are recommended. Bring your family with you on your journey of self-discovery and recontextualization. That will likely be beneficial for you. The only thing is that you probably shouldn't involve them in the individual steps that you're taking, but definitely share with them the fruits of your labor. As you, go off and rediscover things, don't be afraid to come back to your family and be like, hey, look what I found. If they're not receptive to it, that's on them. You are doing your part to help broaden their minds. Right, and the last couple of days before the new moon, we have the Pluto moon opposition between your 2nd and 8th houses. You likely experienced flare-ups with emotions centered around your self-image and material resources. But yeah, that's actually quite supportive of the earlier indications that I've talked about so far. Your obligations to other people, particularly your family, are likely a point of contention while you are on this journey of self-discovery. And as you deviate from your family's established traditions and practices, it's possible, though regrettable in some cases, to be ousted from your family or to outgrow them, to shed them off of you. Severing ties, losing potential resources that you shared, very 8th house, that they were sharing with you because you are learning to stand on your own 2 feet in a general sense. This new moon marks a time for you to really contemplate how you process information and how you communicate with others, but also just how you deal with information, which is actually good because you're, rediscovering all of this new information about yourself and about the world. Because you're essentially rediscovering how you relate to the rest of the world and how you will support yourself materially and mentally within it. It's also important to consider how you will carry these revelations forward and continue evolving them as you continue to confront new information. Now, the square to Uranus, that is coincidental with the new moon, is again coming from your 12th house of hidden things, mental health, escapism. So this actually strengthens the previous indication of engaging with healthy and productive forms of escapism. The temptation, however, will be to engage in more negative ones. But the trick here is that while you are finding your place, finding your footing, and finding your voice, you have to actually use that voice. Just like any emotion, if you sit with something for too long without using it, without letting it out, it festers. And that can have any number of irreparable effects to us. So while you are finding that voice, make sure you're using it. Now, the easy opposition from Venus to Neptune is across your 4th and 10th house, again, angular houses. So this is very interesting heading into Virgo season for you. But there's definitely the potential of blending public and private. For example, you could start an office romance, very Neptune and Venus, or start a blog or something similar to sort of air out things that previously you wanted to keep private. There's also the possibility of a transition of sorts, particularly concerning relationships. In the same vein, though it may not actually be this for you, like coming out of the closet, or bringing a partner home to meet your parents for the first time, especially if you perceive that your parents would not approve of them. That's kind of the atmosphere that I'm getting from those. But the grounding for it, I'm not sure if you can call it that in this sense, is from Pluto in the 8th. But the spirit of coming out, the spirit of bringing a partner home for the first time, and even to a certain extent, starting that office romance and starting that blog or whatever it is for you, they involve taking a chance, taking a leap of faith, in hopes of bettering and strengthening yourself. But they all carry the possibility of rejection or disappointing someone. And that leads to a vicious cycle of, I feel like I can't take this chance because I don't want to disappoint anybody, but now I'm disappointing myself because I'm not taking the chance, but I can't take the chance, blah, 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 blah. The liberation from that vicious cycle lies in realizing that no one can force you to do these things. No one can force you to make these decisions. No one can force you to come out or bring a partner home or start a blog. No one can force you in or out of a relationship. Only you have that power. And if you're not ready to engage in whatever you're being called to do or pulled toward doing at this time, then that's fine. But it definitely has to be your own choice to break free of that decision-making process. And it's either going to lie in, I want to be the truest me to the people who are closest to me, or I'm not ready for that yet. That is a step I'm not ready for. And only you can make that choice. Moving right along to Cancer Rising. So my lovely Cancers, you, for the rest of 2021, are being invited to revisit and re-update your understanding of debt, obligation, as well as other people's finances and resources, including those you share with them, and your perception of others' expectations of you. This could potentially present itself as temporary disengagement from certain people to whom you feel you owe something, or from society as a whole, in order to give yourself that space and time that's needed to redefine those sort of connections in your brain. In any event, you should definitely take the rest of the year to contemplate how you go about navigating societal obligations, including unspoken, written, and verbal contracts, and arguably most importantly, your perception of obligations in general. Until mid-September, there is a reinvigoration, a concerting of efforts surrounding your styles of mental processing and communication. This could also possibly include any siblings if you have them, or your extended family. So over the next month or so, this could lead to a lot of time spent retreating, spent inside yourself, in the pursuit of personal clarity. I know that that's not something that you're not used to, but it also could be more along the lines of taking a vacation, because with the blending of Mars and Venus, there is a drive to pursue peace and harmony. So, a short vacation just to get away from it all, clear your head, and then you can come back and get right back to it. Cool. That wouldn't surprise me in the least. Until the start of Virgo season, so for the rest of this month, essentially, you're likely experiencing a significant boost to your thoughts and voice, especially when you think or talk about your self-image, self-esteem, your resources, your finances, and how and where you feel stable and secure. So this actually goes quite nicely with your call to revisit obligations, because what better way to evaluate your shared resources with someone than to primarily focus on what you have and what you get, But this could be a good time for you for anything mercantile, buying or selling, particularly selling things, because money, money, money. But even if you're buying to make yourself feel more comfortable, the dichotomy of the opposition during the T-square era is shockingly between your resources, your self-image, your stability and security versus other people's material resources, or your shared resources, as well as your obligations to other people. So I don't know if I need to say any more about that, but it could have manifested as opening or closing a joint bank account, or simply deciding that living exclusively for the sake of other people just isn't working for you anymore. But the breakthrough, Uranus in Taurus from your 11th house, is your sense of friendships, of community, and ideals in life. So, and it's also being strengthened from the trine in your house of mental processing, communication style, and potential family members, as well as immediate environment. So this is also super fitting, in my opinion. You're considering who is and isn't your friend or ally, and who can and who you can and can't live without. So those who only seek to take from you, you need to let go. Or those that you perceive to only be taking from you, you just can't afford that sort of energy any longer. The best course of action is to really decide what you will and won't tolerate anymore. And that's plain and simple. But also work on communicating with your friends, allies, and even your family to a certain extent, despite how uncomfortable that conversation might be for both parties or all parties involved. However, again, with Uranus at all, we're experiencing a reversal. Whatever we used to do, that's not what we're doing. So if you've been generally more altruistic, more humanitarian, more focused on other people, you're likely turning more inward. And if you've spent, most of your life up to this point being a bit more self-serving, a bit more selfish, you're likely starting to flip that around and focus on other people more, which is very interesting. But the last couple of days before the new moon, we had this lovely interaction along our 1st and 7th houses, the moon opposite Pluto in Capricorn. So emotional flare-ups, most likely due to relationship drama, any sort of relationship. And they are likely causing you to, in light of everything else, reconsider whether you even need or want that particular relationship anymore, which is also completely natural and expected. But make sure you're taking the right amount of caution before making decisions. That's all I'm going to say. The new moon itself, again, is in Leo, and it's in your second house. So you are really being invited to focus on your sense of security, self-worth, self-image, and your material resources. There is a lot of activity within your succedent houses at this time, the 2nd and 8th, and even the 11th. So there is a possibility that these interactions aren't really hitting you as hard. But there's also possibly the sense that one of these 3 areas, your resources, shared resources, or your senses of community and friendship, one of them is likely taking some sort of hit. You may not feel it on all sides, but you're definitely feeling it somewhere. The square to Uranus, excuse me, does sort of put the contemplation at odds with your senses of friendship and community and your ideals. This is a more or less transformative time within your social circle. And so that can be draining on, your sense of self and stability, basically. But there is the possibility for a big choice here, and that is standing up for yourself and trimming the fat, so to speak, when it comes to your friend group, or you can allow these people to continue leeching off of you, putting your own security and your own resources at risk. So, whatever you're comfortable doing, I can't tell you what to do. But the opposition from Venus to Neptune hits your 3rd and 9th houses. Just like with the other 3rd and 9th house interactions we've seen, this is very much immediate environment versus outside world, closed mind versus open mind, things of that nature. So the issue is arising from the romantic idealism being nostalgic in a way. Is that the word I want to use? But we also almost can't even talk about it without the Pluto in the 7th also contributing to the conversation. So it's being either stabilized or completely destabilized, depending on your approach, to this like need of relationships, but also the need to stand out within relationships, and lots of whatever word you want to put to that, weird controlling energy surrounding relationships. One specific example that comes to mind is being away for college, coming back home for the summer, maybe sitting down for a family dinner, and getting into an argument with your brother or sister, or maybe even Auntie Georgie, I don't know. But particularly over topics that they feel have been maybe indoctrinated into you by the liberal higher education system. So, it's not that you're being indoctrinated, your mind's literally being opened. And that can cause tension. But there's also this need for that connection, and losing that connection likely won't go without, some sort of big hitch. But the trick to the situation is realizing when you need to stop and acquiesce the argument. You don't have to admit that they won, but just like, hey, I'm not doing that. I don't have the energy to do that. Also realize and internalize the fact that you will never be able to convince everybody of the truth or your version of the truth, despite your intentions, your clarity, or your evidence. However, another possible indication is a vacation with a significant other or a group of close friends. Hopefully after all of that hedge trimming from Uranus in the 11th. So let us move on to the next problem child. I am so sorry in advance. Leo Rising. For the remainder of 2021, you are invited to redefine your approaches to relationships of all kinds. As long as they are interpersonal, they are being scrutinized. This could present as questioning whether you or the other party or parties are emotionally mature enough for relationships or your particular flavor of relationship, what kind you want at this current stage of your life, and whether everyone involved is getting what they need and want from the other person. Heavy to say the least. Until mid-September, you are undergoing a reinvigoration, a enlivening of your sense of self-image, self-esteem, your resources, particularly finances, as well as your overall security and stability. I am seeing a particular drive to both attain and spend money. So let's watch out for that. You could also generally adopt a more selfish attitude when it comes to your resources, a little bit less likely to help other people, even when you do have it. But that doesn't even have to include money. It could just be time and energy. Any money you get, you want to spend on yourself. Any extra time or energy you have, you want to spend on yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. Until the start of Virgo season, you are going through a transformation. Past month and a half for Leo Risings, if you are not aware, have been rough, very rough. But specifically when you're thinking or talking about your sense of self, your identity, and your personal motivations, your purpose in life, you're likely very loud, very proud, despite the shit show, so to speak, in the back. This could be a great time, particularly with Mercury's presence, for writing, especially if it's something autobiographical, semi-autobiographical, or even loosely inspired by your own life, as well as mercantile things to make yourself happy, particularly selling things. But there's also, as I said, potential for buying. The dichotomy from the T-square revisit was that of you versus me, of self versus the other. You could have fought with yourself a lot over taking the next step in a relationship or starting a new one. You could have retreated into yourself at the expense of an existing or potential relationship in order to obtain more satisfactory self-growth. Alternatively, you could have ended a significant relationship without much thought for the ramifications of that decision until after the fact. The particular situation that my head's coming up with is like a marriage, realizing that you want a divorce and then going for it, getting it, and then being like, oh, but I didn't plan for anything after. The breakthrough comes from Uranus and Taurus in your 10th, another angular house. Very powerful placements, very public placements. But this is also being boosted by that reinvigoration surrounding your resources and self-esteem. So the need to re-enter the world, reconnect, and socialize, you likely felt that very strongly over the past couple weeks. But it likely resulted in a redefinition of the nature of whatever relationship was at the focal point on this end. So if it was a friendship that you needed to completely separate from, then you began a redefinition of what a friendship is for yourself. If it was a romantic relationship or a marriage, then that's what you began contemplating really heavy. Uranus location here I must mention, does signify a particular rejection of authority, which could manifest as leaving or being fired from a job as well. Alternatively, if any even perceived authoritarian aspect to a relationship popped up, then it wouldn't surprise me in the least that that is why you ended up leaving. Or even still, feelings similar to cabin fever could have stirred up, which spurred you to break ties, there we go, with whatever was weighing you down, or keeping you confined. Again, that's very Saturn energy, that confinement, that restriction. And so whatever you were perceiving was doing all of that, you were just like, nope, and, broke out of jail, so to speak. In the last couple of days before the new moon, did have the Pluto moon opposition along your 6th and 12th houses. So intense emotional flare-ups concerning your mental health institutions, escapism, but really the feeling or the fear of loss. These were likely caused and underpinned by some sort of upset to the status quo. That's not the right draw. Some sort of upset within the status quo, which is entirely understandable given what we've just been talking about. The focus of this brief transit, and it was a very brief transit, the moon moves very fast, was likely the need to retain a sense of normalcy while attempting to redefine and transcend that same sense of normalcy. And so there's this fear of the new normal is a good way to put it. That needing to adjust is not something that we as humans do particularly well. But alternatively, there are also possible indications of overworking yourself, Pluto and Capricorn in the 6th, which can itself lead to intense emotional outbursts, probably due to a lack of positive mental health care, which also goes hand in hand with the possibility of leaving a stable job, Uranus in the 10th. But the new moon itself is, of course, in your 1st house. So this is a time for you to really contemplate on yourself. And the only real thing in the way right now is your career, or how people perceive you, or how you present yourself to other people. This could manifest as a complete rejection of what others think of you. And again, leaving a sustainable career or relationship in pursuit of a purer and longer lasting happiness and contentment. Alternatively, there could be a self-sacrifice kind of going in the other direction, where the new moon is a time of contemplation. There is the possibility of tapping too far into that passivity, that natural passivity, and essentially, staying at a soul-crushing job, or caving into peer pressure, or something along those lines. And finally, we have the opposition from Venus to Neptune along your 2nd and 8th houses. There is the potential for reaching compromise between relationships because you are blending and balancing resources, which is very, very good. Alternatively, you could be blending your resources and sense of self-worth with the general public, which is completely different. But either way, it is being aided by your need to, that's again, not the right draw. Eventually I'll get it. By the need to maintain a sense of normalcy and get a grasp on your overall health. So this could present as a closing of a joint bank account, or maintaining one in spite of the parties involved now being separated. That is also a possible indication. There's also the potential for losing your sense of self. But in the context of losing yourself in service to other people, which does sound kind of bad, but there's also, with Venus particularly involved, there's a certain romantic idealized air that's coming off of it. And that makes me think that it's more of a welcome sense of loss of the self. And though I certainly wouldn't blame you for wanting to give up your agency, even if only briefly, I cannot in good conscience suggest leaning into that or advocate for it in any way. So in order to avoid losing yourself romantically or otherwise, while you try to completely redefine basically everything about you at this point, use that dreamy, creative, romantic energy by channeling it into service for a community or group, not one specific person. Volunteer work could be good, whatever form, that wants to take for you, would actually allow you to remain productive and work with others toward a common goal while still giving yourself a little bit of time to yourself to process all of the archetypes that are raging inside of you in very particular and strong ways. But moving right along with Virgo Rising. All right, Virgo. For the rest of 2021, you are being invited to revisit and update your approach to work, service, your daily routines, and your overall long-term health. This is a very good time to start a new diet, pick up a new workout regimen, get into the gym, and just generally reconsider the structure that your daily life takes. Until mid-September, you are going through a reinvigoration of efforts surrounding your sense of self, your psychological and personal motivations, and what you want. So this could present as a renewed drive for personal change, coupled with the frugality and patience necessary to see it through to the end. That would be a very, very positive indication. It's likely that you've been criticizing yourself a lot lately about things that you almost certainly can control, though they could be difficult to work with and get a handle on. You may want to listen to that nagging voice in the back of your head and assess what you can and can't, and what you want and don't want to control and change at this point in your life. But in general, be kind to yourself, because you are literally going through it, and we're not even to your birthday season yet. Or not your birthday season, but your sign's birthday season. So the sun's not even there yet. I do find it very interesting that there is this sort of like almost precursor transformation before the sun gets there. Mercury will get there first, but it's Virgo season's going to be interesting. Probably not nearly as interesting as Gemini, Cancer, and Leo season, but we'll see. Speaking of, for the rest of August, you're likely experiencing a significant boost when you are thinking or talking about your mental health, your relationships with loss and escapism, and your engagement with institutions, both societal and physical. So this could be a great time to start or restart therapy, or just generally make sure you're taking the necessary time away from everything to process your emotions and day-to-day activities. Additionally, this could be a good time to illuminate hidden things by talking about them. It's very interesting how I saw this. The 12th house is also the house of hidden things, particularly hidden enemies, but without even, calling them out or talking to them directly, simply by using your voice, you might have the ability to get the snakes out of the grass, so to speak. The dichotomy set up by the oppositions during the T-square formation was that of physical versus mental health, daily routines versus escapism, or some other similar dividing line. It could also be the mundane versus the less mundane. This is along a cadent axis in the chart. So you may not have experienced this T-square series almost at all, which you're very lucky. But if this dichotomy was prominent in your life, I would definitely suggest trying to get into therapy. Or if that's, not really something up your alley, you want something a bit more private and not involving anybody else. If you are familiar with the concept of shadow work or not, you can kind of, dabble in that. It can get really deep, but it is usually encouraged to do while you're in therapy. But that's something for you to take up with yourself. But yes, but that's if you feel it. Again, it's going through a cadent axis in your chart, so you may not feel it at all. For those of you who were feeling this particular struggle, the breakthrough came from Uranus and Taurus in your 9th house. Concerning the topics of religion and spirituality, occultism, higher education, foreign travel, things like that. This could manifest as seeking out our alternative forms of healing, including spiritual practices like Reiki and yoga, holistic medicine, or seeking some sort of magical practice for help. Given that your relationship to escapism is also being highlighted during this time, there are indications of seeking refuge through a new spiritual or religious practice yourself, searching for a sense of normalcy in something that is outside of your usual comfort zone, which is a very interesting take. But it is also being supported by this redefinition of the self. So to me, it does strengthen the indication of going outside the everyday mundanities of life and reaching for something more to grasp onto. In the final days before the new moon, we have the moon's opposition to Pluto along your 11th, 5th house axis. So there were likely some emotional flare-ups within or surrounding your friend group or immediate community, and they may have been spurred on or slightly or underpinned by slightly more selfish forms of creation, recreation, and entertainment. A possible manifestation is investing too much of yourself into hobbies, romance, and or children, which caused a rift between you and your chosen community group. Or some drama involving children or a romantic fling, perhaps, could have pushed you to seek refuge or solace within a friend group or community, which, the emotions wouldn't have been because of the community, but they would have been expressed within the community. So that's something. The new moon itself is in Leo in your 12th house. So what you are invited to contemplate heavily at this time is your mental health, any escapist behaviors that you engage with, and your relationship to certain institutions, as well as things that might be hidden from you by you or other people. The immediate roadblock that you're going to face along this path is dealing with your relationship to the outside world. Again, religion and spirituality, higher education, foreign travel, etc. So this could manifest as feeling like you are too focused on the outside world to really focus on your own personal internal world. It's equally possible that you could either entirely reject or wholeheartedly embrace something or anything foreign to you, which could be good or bad. But if you were recently drawn to a new practice or seeking out higher knowledge, you shouldn't let the fear of the unknown dictate how you interact with that once you start to get close to it. Additionally, we have the opposition between Venus and Neptune along your 1st and 7th houses. Again, an angular house, so we're probably feeling this one. So this is blending of yourself and the other party or parties with whom you hold interpersonal relationships. This can be good or bad, depending on how much you lean into it. There is the distinct possibility of losing yourself, both in general and in the context of relationships. But the general indication here is that of romantic idealism, as I've said, which only ever really leads to disappointment. So we need to make sure that we're taking the necessary precautions and steps to keep yourself grounded, particularly if you are generally prone to flights of fancy, especially when it comes to relationships. Speaking of, though, the grounding, if you can call that, is coming from your expression, your sense of fun and games and children and romance and sex. Honestly, I'm seeing the potential for a unique and rare gift. You don't always get the ability to ground yourself by having fun, but Virgo, you've got it right now. Like, if you start to recognize that you're struggling to maintain a sense of identity and agency, particularly in a relationship, but even at all, disengage with whatever's causing it. Don't give into it anymore, and have fun outside of that. I'm seeing that will do absolutely wonders for your mental state. All right, Libra Risings, let's go. For the rest of 2021, Libra Risings, that's not good at all. Here we go. Nope. Okay, whatever. You get the idea. You're being invited to revisit and update your approaches to creation, recreation, entertainment, romance, children, all of that, which could present as a new romantic chapter for you, either romantic or casually, or both. It's generally just a good time to revisit how you express yourself and what brings you pleasure in life. Until mid-September, you're going through a reinvigoration of efforts surrounding your mental health, any escapist tendencies you might have, dealing with loss, and possibly institutions, both societal and physical. This could present as a more focused drive toward balancing out your mental health, in which case therapy is also a good option, as well as shadow work, depending on your particular views on that. You could either engage or disengage with escapism, depending on whether you find it healthy or not. But it's all in the spirit of working through issues as opposed to ignoring them. We don't want to ignore or sidestep. Until the start of Virgo season, excuse me, you'll likely experience a significant boost to your thoughts and voice when thinking and speaking about community, friendships, allies, and overall goals in life and ideals for life and communities. So this could manifest in an archetypal sense as making a decision based on the self, but that also serves the greater good. For example, more fervently expressing and working towards your particular societal ideals and within your own community. So this could also be a generally great time for celebration with friends. So, if anything comes up in the next monthish, celebrate. You don't have to go out to do it. You can celebrate from inside. The dichotomy produced by the T-Square series was that of a more personal, self-serving creativity and fun versus the need to serve and belong to a community or friend group. There was probably a struggle in exploring and expanding your own limitations and boundaries that you specifically most likely subconsciously constructed for yourself. So as you likely explored and learned new ways for you to find joy and pleasure in life, it's perfectly natural to feel cut off from time to time from your friends or community. There could also be a tinge of guilt for having voluntarily sort of done this to yourself voluntarily with a big air quote around it. The breakthrough comes from Uranus and Taurus in your 8th house, the concepts of debt, obligation, expectations. And of course, it's being strengthened by this reinvigoration surrounding your mental health, institutions, loss, things of that nature. Honestly, I feel that this goes very hand in hand with the issues that are in front of you. So as you have likely felt guilty for separating yourself from your community and friends, even if it is for self-improvement, but by integrating your friends into your new boundaries, by sharing with them the new limit that you have found, no matter how frequently or infrequently you find it, you can all share and rejoice, celebrate within that growth. So we do want to contemplate how to approach these beneficial and supportive relationships. But it's also important that you not feel too beholden to any of them, very Uranus in the 8th, because that will restrict any personal growth that you are trying to get through. There is, interestingly enough, the possibility of leaving a stable job without any 10th house interactions, because this would symbolize a societal or written contract, and particularly square the sun, authority figures, things of that nature. But, and no direct 2nd house interactions either, but this would, this could also present as wanting to buck up against a benefactor, shared resources, and stand on your own 2 feet within the world, maybe for the first time. So it's very interesting. The overall energy of the T-square revisit for you that I'm seeing is pretty much, I know what I am, what I stand for, and what I am worth, and I am worth more than this. Which, good for you. Good for you. So in the last couple of days before the actual new moon, we had the moon in Cancer in the 10th opposing Pluto and Capricorn in the 4th, angular houses. Sound the alarms. Intense emotional flare-ups within the public sphere and career, likely spurred on or underpinned by stresses at home or within the family. So there could have been family drama or trauma that surfaced, culminating in a more public outburst than what was called for. Alternatively, there is an indication of downplaying or burying trauma in order to preserve the public image and save face, likely causing some sort of outburst. However, there's also, with the particular, especially with the indication of possibly leaving a job, there is something there about not really having a home, but wanting a home. And that's, doing some emotional things in the 10th. Yeah, it works. But the new moon itself is in Leo in your 11th house. So you should be contemplating your approaches to community, friendships, allies, and your overall goals in life and for your social circles. The immediate roadblock, again, is going to be Uranus and Taurus in the 8th, your senses of debt, obligation, and expectations. The notions of grand societal impacts are being contemplated here, with that wanting to redefine ourselves within society, but also doing so without being beholden to existing contracts. It's very interesting. Honestly, thus begins the great breaking away from those existing structures, contracts, and expectations that no longer serve us, but only serve to limit us. Again, I know what I'm worth, and I'm worth more than this. So like there is a sense of obligation to other people, but if it's detrimental to you, you don't want anything to do it. You don't want anything to do with it anymore, which again, good for you. Additionally, we do have the opposition from Venus to Neptune across the 12th and 6th house axis. So there's a potential for losing yourself within your own mind on a nearly daily basis here, especially since your mental health was already like a fairly strong focus. So this could lead to problems with your physical health because you will naturally start to pay less and less attention to anything physical or grounded in physical reality. So make sure you're staying aware both internally and externally, because forsaking one's physical health for your mental health is not, it's not healthy. It's not good. It's not productive. But for one reason or another, there's the potential for losing your sense of time and daily normalcy. So the grounding here is actually coming from home. Pluto and Capricorn in the 4th. So you could have recently lost or left a job and are now spending much more time at home, as we were talking about before. Alternatively, family traumas could have forced an escapist mindset to develop. That's very Venus in the 12th. In general, the next week or so is going to be a really good time to make sure you're taking time out to sit with yourself, preferably by yourself without any form of mental or external stimulation, so that you can work through your demons and your problems, whichever form that they like to take. And make sure you're maintaining a sense of normalcy, particularly through meditation, general mindfulness. All of that's going to be super, super important. I would also like to recommend setting any sort of schedule that you can keep during this time, whether it involves waking up at the same time every day and going to bed at the same time every day, eating meals at the same time every day, going on a walk or exercising at the same time every day. And, you know, whatever you can structure, do that. This will serve to give you time landmarks throughout the day and keep you rooted in physical reality to maintain a more healthy sense of time and a healthy circadian rhythm. So, excuse me, with Scorpio rising. For the rest of 2021, Scorpios, you're being invited to revisit and update your approaches to your home, family, and private life, particularly your father, possibly with Saturn's presence. Questions to consider during this time include what you think about a home, house, or family in general, what you want out of and for your house, home, and family, whether it is responsible or feasible to start your own in the near future, and whether it's more beneficial to adhere to a more conservative or traditional definition of the word or pursue a more liberal and flexible one. Until mid-September, you are likely going through a reinvigoration surrounding friendships, allies, community, and ideals in life. So this could present as some strained friendships or uniting two separate friend groups, which can lead to that strain, or becoming a bit overbearing and perfectionistic when these topics come up. In general, though, the softer significations indicate a persistent and consistent effort toward maintaining friendships and connection and access within your community. All quite good. I like that for you. Until the start of Virgo season, you will likely experience a significant boost to your thoughts and voice, but particularly when you talk about your public life, career, and how you present yourself to the world. We're starting to hit your angular houses, so bear with me. So this is a great transit for any sort of performer or artist, anybody out in the public doing things for the public, that kind of thing. But this could indicate some sort of career change. But at the very least, you're probably thinking about and talking a lot more about whatever the next step is for you, which could include changing careers, could include taking on more responsibilities at work, gunning for a promotion or a raise, anything like that. But in general, especially with it being in Leo and your 10th house, whatever is dealing with the public for you, whatever is intrinsically public facing is being pushed even more to the forefront. The opposition during the T-square era highlighted the dichotomy of the public life versus the private life. Again, we're hitting your angular houses, so we're about to get into some pretty deep stuff. Your home and family versus your career, things of that nature. Where your approach to the homestead will generally be more stringent and defined in a rigid way, given that both giants are there. Your public life and career could be blossoming and breaking boundaries that you previously thought were insurmountable. It's very Sun and Mercury. There is the potential for certain events within the home or family to cause you to act out in a positive or negative way in public. Again, very good for performing artists. The breakthrough, of course, comes from Uranus and Taurus in the 7th, your house of interpersonal relationships. And it's being strengthened by that reinvigorated sense of community and friendship. So overall, overall, your ties to family are being revisited, reworked, redefined, and rewired. Lots of R words. While your more social relationships, friendships, even romantic and sexual attractions to an extent, they are being enlivened and strengthened at this time. They're also going through their own bit of change, which can be naturally straining. But that leaves you with interpersonal relationships as your only solid safety net, socially speaking. So there is the potential here for all relationships to find new ground. So beware of relying on anybody too much, because you don't want to voluntarily strain any relationships that aren't being directly affected by these transits in the first place. But this could be a great time for networking in general. If you're feeling like your family doesn't appreciate you, or that you cannot fiscally or otherwise move out and establish your own home or your own family, it may be time to utilize that natural charm with Scorpio Rising and a 10th house Leo that you have in order to find an escape plan should things continue to, worsen. In the last couple of days before the new moon, you have the opposition of Pluto in the 3rd and the moon in Cancer in the 9th. This is emotional flare-ups concerning how you deal with the outside world, religion and spirituality, higher education, foreign travel, things like that. And it was being underpinned or possibly caused by turmoil within the immediate environment, how you mentally process information and how you communicate with others. One possible indication is receiving a rejection letter from a university when you felt really good and positive about your application. Additionally, some family tension could bleed over from the 4th house into the 3rd, and by virtue, the 10th house into the 9th. Particularly when dealing with small-minded idle chatter or arguments over us versus them sort of mentalities. So there's a little bit of that sort of bleeding over can result in a stronger bond with religion and spirituality, moon and Cancer in the 9th, though not necessarily the one that your family practices. So that's sort of branching out away from established traditions. The new moon itself, again, is in Leo in your 10th house. You are to contemplate your public life, your career, and specifically how your interpersonal relationships play a part in that area of your life. So possible indications are changing career, redefining for yourself what you want to be public and what you'd rather keep private, and possibly bearing all to the world in a performance of sorts. And all of these possibilities can indeed affect your one-on-one relationships, for better or worse. One specific thing I would caution you to watch out for is oversharing, particularly of personal information, but especially if it's not yours. And finally, Scorpio, the opposition between Venus in Virgo in the 11th and Neptune in Pisces in the 5th brings the potential for romantic idealism to the forefront. This is going to be similar to Taurus risings, where you can end up losing yourself or sight of reality within the context of like a new fling. But it is possible that you could end up conflating this reinvigoration of friendships and community with something that is more romantic or sexually charged. So definitely watch out for that. But there's also the possibility of intense dreams during this time for you, which could cloud or illuminate your social ideals as you begin to reach them or reach for them. The third aspect at this time is Pluto in the third in Capricorn. So we have this relation to closed-minded thinking, small talk, but also generally how you process information and communicate with others. So with the potential of family drama bleeding over, as I've mentioned before, it's possible that that will only exacerbate the romantic idealism in the form of desperately seeking somewhere to call home. But it's equally as likely that this desperation can push you harder toward establishing that home instead of simply needing to escape your current one. Moving right along, Sagittarius Rising. For the rest of 2021, you are invited to revisit your forms of communication, how you process information, your relationships to your siblings and extended family members, and your immediate environment. So this is a good time to think about your daily communiques and how you go about processing new information at the detailed level. Until mid-September, the reinvigoration is being focused on your career and public image. So 10th house, this is going to be a fairly powerful interaction for you. So certainly a good time to reach for a work-life balance, whatever that might mean for you. Consider chasing a new career or promotion or a raise. And generally think about how you present yourself to the outside world and how you can update that to better reflect who you actually are. Specifically, though, watch out for a developing atmosphere of perfectionism and a tendency to nag oneself, particularly at work. That's not going to be fun for anybody. Until the start of Virgo season, you will likely experience a significant boost to your thoughts and actions, thoughts and words, particularly when you are considering your relationship to the outside world. And of course, this includes religion, spirituality, higher education, and foreign travel. The possibility for performative intellectual discussion is rather high, but it could also be a time to allow others to humble you into actually listening to what they may have to say about certain things with which you have less experience. Of particular interest at this time is religion, spirituality, things of that nature, possibly even occultism. So the trick during this transit is to sit back and allow others to contribute to the conversation. You're not always meant to shine. So use that natural charisma that you have in that area to share the stage with someone who is more knowledgeable than yourself. Alternatively, you could be thinking about starting or returning to some form of institution of higher learning. The dichotomy set forth by the opposition during the T-square series is that between your 9th and 3rd houses. This is very much still immediate environment versus outside world. The way you understand details versus how you understand big pictures, and us versus them, closed mind, open mind, excuse me, all of these things that we've talked about so far with other signs. So your struggle is very similar to Gemini risings, but the roles are reversed. So there's a grounding in the details for you. You are revisiting details at this time, but the illumination is in the space of mysticism, spirituality, expanding knowledge, the big picture. So there is a certain level of separation, seclusion, restriction, keeping you from this expansion. So while these walls demand respect, they also have to be transgressed in order to gain greater clarity. So you will most likely experience some sort of unforeseen blowback from yourself as you try to expand your mind. The breakthrough in all of this comes from Uranus and Taurus in the 6th, so the house of overall health, work ethic, daily routines, things of that nature. And it's being supported, or it was being supported, by a trine from your 10th house, that reinvigoration of career and public identity. So a change is likely incoming, a redefinition of what your relationship to the mundanities of everyday life is actually like. And in keeping with that, it's possible that the pursuit of higher knowledge in whatever form it's taking for you and the reinvigoration of balancing your public image and likely career are combining in ways to push you towards leaving home or embarking on a solitary spiritual journey, particularly before you feel you're ready. The heir of the T-square in general is likely wanting to better serve others and yourself, and wanting to change whatever is necessary and broaden your horizons to discover or rediscover your higher calling, your higher purpose, and then better align with it, of course. But in keeping with all of that, it is possible that these pursuits are combining in ways to, leave home, possibly for the first time even, but particularly before you're ready. But you could also rebel against immediate environment and community, which can include your family, and pursuing a much more open-minded view of the world. That's sort of pursuing a new religious or spiritual practice, going back to college, traveling the world, all of these things. So in the last couple days, before the actual new moon, we had the Pluto moon opposition along your 2nd and 8th house axis. So you likely experienced emotional flare-ups dealing with shared resources, obligations, and expectations from other people, as well as the desire to more deeply understand things. This honestly fits really nicely with the T-square formations, as you were desiring and being called to change a bunch of aspects in your life, to be honest. There's this fleeting emotional storm, like right at the end of it, that is rooted in the fear of disappointment of others and yourself. So the need to understand and experience more as well, and the loss of certain shared resources. But overall, it's being spurred by this need to ground yourself, to stand up for yourself, to support yourself, as well as understand yourself. It's very interesting. The new moon itself, of course, is in Leo in your 9th house. So what are you supposed to be contemplating? That's right, big picture things, religion, spirituality, higher education, foreign travel, all of those good things. And the roadblock is coming from Uranus in the 6th again. So daily routines, health, work ethic, all of those good things. As you think about how you are expanding your horizons and experiencing new things, it's also important to remain grounded and focused on the now, especially since your material life could be taking a rather chaotic turn. Remember, Uranus is all about taking whatever was and turning it upside down. Though the desire to redefine yourself and your reality may be strong, you have to take care to remember that your current reality won't change nearly as quickly as your mind will. But additionally, we have the Venus opposition to Neptune along your 10th and 4th axis. So again, the blending of public and private, much like Gemini Rising, but again, the roles are reversed. So it doesn't give me the sense of you're taking what's private and making it public, or that what was private became public, so much as the opposite. So there could be instead a withdrawal, a work-life balance that's shifting more toward life and less toward work. There is a certain level of needing to retreat here with Pisces in the 4th. So with all of these changes likely running rampant in your life at this current juncture, it is possible that you want to hide away from it. But remember that you're trying to broaden your horizons. You're trying to reach for your higher purpose. So of course, there's going to be an air of discomfort from time to time, just reaching for something new all the time. The grounding for this experience actually comes from Pluto in the second. So this need for retreat is being grounded by the supplemental need for you to stand on your own, to provide for yourself and to see yourself in a more positive light. So as I was saying, remember, you're reaching for greatness here. It's completely natural to question whether you deserve it or if you're even able to reach it. And even so, to truly reach for greatness, to reach for our higher purpose and become more aligned with it, sometimes ties that don't serve that higher calling or higher purpose have to be severed or at least allowed to fall away. And that's okay. That is okay. All right, Capricorn Rising. For the rest of 2021, you are invited to revisit and update your relationship to your material resources, money, time, energy, as well as your senses of self-image and self-esteem and your general stability and security. It's a good time to conserve what you receive, especially in terms of money and time, at least until early October when Jupiter stations direct again. But even then, Jupiter won't re-enter Pisces until like literally 2 or 3 days before the new year. But the overall air here is that you want to avoid overextension of yourself and your resources. Until mid-September, the reinvigoration you're going through is surrounding your relationship to the outside world, the world at large, higher education of whatever form. So you could take up a new spiritual or religious practice at about this time, or strengthen or focus on an already established one. You could enter or re-enter an institution of higher learning, or go on an extended vacation, which I can't really suggest given what's happening. But you could also move to a foreign country just to experience a new place. I will also warn against that last one because that will definitely hinder the more conservative attitude we're supposed to have about finances at this time. So probably not that one, but you do you. Additionally, if you're taking up a new religious or spiritual practice, or even strengthening an existing one, or heading off to college, whatever it may be, perfectionism is going to be an issue. That's what I'm seeing. So watch out for that. Compromise, settling is not an inherent loss. And the phrase is, rejection is divine protection. Do with that what you will. Until the start of Virgo season, the boost you're experiencing is when you consider your shared resources with others, as well as obligations and expectations from other people, including spoken or written or unspoken or unwritten contracts and agreements. So there is a preoccupation of your mind, likely by more selfish concerns, how you benefit from and fit into these contracts and resources. That's a very likely indication. The questions you should be asking yourself at this time are, do I feel fulfilled by fulfilling these obligations? Do I get anything from this? And yeah, so, and then when talking about shared resources, am I getting out what I'm putting in to the pool? Completely in line with that exact topic, shockingly enough, the T-Square series highlighted the dichotomy of mine and yours, of me and you, of what I need versus what you need from me, what you want from me, all of that goodness. So there's a possibility that it presented as struggles over money or other resources with other people specifically. particularly in the loss of money in support of someone else. There's also the possible indication of beginning to truly see how living for the fulfillment of others could leave you feeling unfulfilled in general. The breakthrough comes from Uranus and Taurus in the 5th house. So you are experiencing an awakening when it comes to sex, romance, children, fun, creation, recreation, all of that good stuff. However you usually go about these things is not how you're doing it this time. So there is a general air, given your Cancer 7th house. This won't apply to everybody, but if it does, it does. That there is an air of catering to other people in general. So you could most definitely at this time become more highly aware of how you are not being supported by other people, though you support other people almost completely and to your detriment. That breakthrough was being supported by the reinvigoration of your relation to the rest of the world. So the opening of the mind's eye, metaphorical or literal, whatever, and realizing your place within the world, all the while striving for that perfection or as close as you can get to it, that's likely opening your eyes to the error of living solely for other people or living solely for yourself, depending on what flip-flop is happening for you. Whatever end of that spectrum that you were on, it's likely that you're doing the complete opposite right now. And that's completely fine. We're trying to find that balance, And so it's completely fine to hop from one end to the other end. Just make sure you come back to the middle, preferably soon, but everybody's soon is different. Because it's not going to be healthy for you to stay on either end for too long. The past couple of days before the new moon itself, we did have the Pluto opposition with the moon across your 1st and 7th axis. So emotional flare-ups concerning relationships, especially how you fit within them, given the other things going on in your life right now. So this is entirely fitting to the nature of the rest of the transits, even though this is a fleeting one. So relationship drama, real or perceived, was likely the root of the problem. However, we can't ignore the fact that you may have made your own monster. It's very Pluto in the 1st. Likely being pulled by strong senses of self-discovery, self-transformation, all of these good things. You might have created the argument that set you off, or you could have simply projected the turmoil within you onto someone else. So really need to take a moment and assess, which of those fits. The new moon is, of course, in Leo in the 8th. So you are meant to contemplate your obligations to other people, the resources you share with other people, and your general attitude toward the topics of loss and debt. And the first roadblock to this is naturally going to be Uranus and Taurus in the 5th. So that rebellious streak that you're going through in terms of self-expression, having fun, sex and romance, children. Honestly, I won't lie, my first thought when I saw this particular interaction in this particular place is the potential to use sex as an outlet for the tension indicated by recent transits, which isn't inherently negative or detrimental. But while redefining your obligations to other people, there could be a tendency toward manipulation and using people for your own amusement, which is not good. I strongly advise you to watch out for that. Now that we got that out of the way, alternatively, there could be a more creatively expressive outlet for all of this tension, making art of some sort, or simply engaging in different games and different forms of having and seeking fun. The opposition from Venus to Neptune along your 9th and 3rd house axis is blending your detail-oriented understanding and your big picture understanding of the world. You could have a tendency at this time to extrapolate personal understandings to larger groups of people, which is always going to fall short. There's also possible tension between a closed-minded group of people and a more open-minded mindset, whether you have it or another group has it. So as you take up any new religious or spiritual practice, go off to college, anything like that, know that there are some people in your life with whom you may feel very emotionally connected that will simply no longer serve the new you who's likely to come out of the other side of it. Additionally, there can be some truths that come to light within the more immediate community, Neptune on the third, that will tend to push you out into the world before you feel like you're ready, Venus, Mars in the ninth. Alternatively, still, if you are traveling soon, you could become homesick fairly early on, even going so far as to dream of home while you are sleeping wherever you are. The grounding for this struggle comes from Pluto in the first. Grounding indeed. Your rediscovery of the self, and a quite strong one at that. As you begin to venture out, discover who you are again, or who you are, period, as the case may be. I'm not going to judge. It is natural to long for the past and the comforts of home, but it's just as natural to outgrow that home. Either way, these changes, these periods of intense self-discovery that we're all going through right now, but you got it a little harder because you got Pluto in your first, have likely been a very, very long time coming. So allow them to take their course. All right, Aquarius, let's go. For the rest of 2021, unsurprisingly, you are contemplating your sense of self, your motivations, how you approach new situations, what you want, what you need, all of that good stuff. The rest of the year is all about you, at least as far as, you know, these two dinguses are concerned. So take this time to really get to know yourself and what makes you tick as an individual. Until mid-September, you are going through a reinvigoration surrounding shared resources, obligations, and expectations to and from other people, and maybe loss, recovering from it, and the themes of debt. So this could present as something like opening a joint bank account, or maybe simply disengaging from unspoken or unnecessary obligations in search of more balance, particularly with the focus being on yourself. Until the start of Virgo season, you are experiencing an enlivening, a quickening, a brightening when it comes to interpersonal relationships. Again, we're hitting angular houses. This is going to be fun. This likely doesn't signify getting into a new relationship or starting anything new, but there are certainly thoughts and conversations surrounding the topic. Remember that new moons are all about contemplation, not action. Potentially, you could be coming off of a breakup or falling out with somebody, in which case you are fulfilling the giant's roles by rediscovering yourself outside of the context of that relationship, but you are possibly considering getting back out there and attempting to find the next thing for you. This could also present as thinking heavily and talking about proceeding to the next stage in a given relationship, whatever that might mean for you in whatever stage that relationship is. The dichotomy formed by the opposition during the T-square is along your first seventh axis. So this is self versus the other. So with the giants dictating your general attitude toward yourself, there is a strong sense of isolation and separation here. Personal boundaries are likely being redefined, and they likely even were more strongly at that time. And they were likely triggered by the relationships you held at the time with other people. It's entirely possible that one of these relationships is with an authority or father figure, given the sun's position in the seventh. The breakthrough, unsurprisingly, comes from Uranus in Taurus in the fourth. So home, family, and private life. This strengthens the possibility that a father figure is involved, as again, Uranus does reject authority. If there were talks or murmurings of moving in together or buying a house together, it is likely something that you had not thought about before, or that you had previously decided was not an option. And it is being supported by this reinvigoration of your your concepts of debt, obligation, shared resources with other people, things of that nature. So it's possible that new information regarding finances you share with your partner opened up a previously closed door, such as getting a house together. Alternatively, an inheritance could make everything that was once impossible suddenly very possible. You could also buck against the ideas of taking the next step in a relationship due to the journey of self-discovery that you are undergoing at this time. It wouldn't be feasible or fair to invest more in a relationship or allow your partner to do so if it may not make it through the soon to come dismantling of yourself. So with all of these changes likely occurring or looming over you and your current relationships, you need to also respect that your personal boundaries are still being tested, and it's up to you where you draw your line. In keeping with this, it is also possible that you separated and isolated yourself, retreating into your own head as a means of escape. This could have manifested as breaking up with your partner simply due to the fact that you were uncomfortable or feeling restricted, and likely without discussing it with them at all first, or something to that effect. In the last couple of days before the actual new moon, we have the Pluto opposition to that way, to the moon in Cancer along your 12th, 6th house axis. This could be emotional flare-ups surrounding your daily routines, overall health and well-being, and is likely spurred on and allowed to continue by a sense or fear of loss, very 12th house. A big argument or two is likely centered around, from your perspective at least, wanting to hold on to any sense of normalcy that you still have. With your sense of self and identity in question, again, all that first house activity you got going on. The last thing you may have wanted is for your partner to pop the question or initiate talks of buying a house together, or for your friend to suddenly want to spend a lot more or less time with you, detracting from that desperately needed alone time. It's also possible that if someone close to you tried to make you talk about what's going on with you, especially before you were ready, you likely snapped. That could have also been a thing. In general, the new moon itself is in Leo in your 7th house. It's time for you to contemplate your interpersonal relationships, but specifically how they relate to your home, family, and private life. This would go double if you find your father or father figure to be of particular focus during this time. Again, Sun and Leo in the 7th, and we're talking about relationships. This could be tension between your partner or your friend and your family, especially your parents. With you caught in the middle, it could be incredibly difficult to pick a side. This could also present as bucking up against daddy, potentially, and starting a new relationship of which he wouldn't approve, or deciding to finally embark into the world on your own to establish your own more positive and accepting home and family. Lots of big changes, But we also have the opposition from, there you are, from Venus to Neptune along your 2nd, 8th house axis. So this is a blending of resources. But the potential is deceiving yourself into believing that someone else's goals, wants, and needs are your own. There's a certain level of deception here, with your self-esteem, self-image, and your personal resources being the focus. Maintaining your sense of agency within the world and within your life is core to life itself. So take care not to let you or anyone else trick you into believing that you don't have any agency or control. There's also an air of wanting to be the perfect partner, perfect child, perfect member of society, any of that. If that sounds like you, please hear me out when I tell you that you're lying to yourself. Okay? You will never be perfect, the perfect anything. And to push yourself beyond your means and bend over backwards to please and live for others will not satisfy you or prove that you are perfect. It only serves to prove that basically you're subservient. And that is a far cry from being perfect, especially context of relationship. Realize that though you'll never be perfect, you can strive to get as close as you can, however that might look for you. Like, I'm not going to judge. But the grounding, if you want to call it that, comes from Pluto in the 12th, which is I was about to say bad. It's a scary place for Pluto to be. But this is the fear of the unknown, fear of what is hidden, fear of loss, and possibly even fear of yourself. Getting a handle on that vast expanse of both infinite and finite space that is your head should be a focus for you moving forward, especially since you'll likely be rediscovering yourself for the next 5 months. But in closing, let us go to Pisces. Pisces Risings. For the rest of 2021, you're being invited to revisit and update your approaches to societal and physical structures, mental health, and escapism, as well as loss and things that are hidden. This could be a good time to start or return to therapy, just as a general rule of thumb, or shadow work if that's something that interests you. At any rate, your opinions and concepts of all things hidden and looming should be of great focus for the rest of the year. Until mid-September, you are undergoing a reinvigoration of efforts surrounding interpersonal relationships. If you are fearing loss, you need to work on not losing. And if you have lost, you need to revisit your part in anything that may have transpired so that you do not repeat the same mistakes. But if neither of these seem to fit quite right, you are likely undergoing a sort of renaissance period in terms of relationships, platonic, romantic, or otherwise. This could present as a disengagement from relationships in order to contemplate what it is you want and need. Just as likely, it could be a literal renaissance period where you are really feeling the pontification of prose and romantic stuff. Until the start of Virgo season, you likely will experience a boost to your thoughts and voice, particularly when considering your health, everyday routines, work ethic, service, things of that nature. The dynamic between these two types of health represented cannot be ignored. However, with these placements hitting within your cadent houses, it's likely that they're not manifesting very clearly, if at all. But if you are fearing loss, in this case, loss of normalcy or agency over your own body or health, then you need to work on not losing. I'm sensing a theme here. This could be a great time to get into the gym, start a new diet, or just generally take better care of yourself. The dichotomy highlighted from the oppositions during the T-square series was that of just that. Normalcy and routine versus escapism, work and service versus institutions, and maybe even physical versus mental health. It is possible that some of you just recently were diagnosed with a heart condition or some similar chronic condition. That would be a very understandable reason for the renewed focus on your physical health and struggling with the mental aspect of loss and escapism simultaneously. The breakthrough comes from Uranus and Taurus in the 3rd, your mental processing style, communication style, maybe even your siblings or extended family. The theme of getting away from it all comes to mind: external escapism in lieu of internal, beneficial as opposed to detrimental. Even something as simple as a staycation would fit this bill, at least in my opinion. It's being supported and strengthened by your interpersonal relationships. That reinvigoration that you're going through. So it's possible that the condition with which you find yourself diagnosed isn't as chronic as I indicated earlier, but rather is more acute. And all you really needed to do was talk through your stresses and probably take better care of yourself anyway. Therapy and practice not losing. Alternatively, your partner or close friends could have joined you on a short-term vacation or staycation. Within the last couple of days before the new moon, we did have the opposition of the moon and Pluto across your 11th and 5th house axis. This is emotional flare-ups concerning creative expression, fun and games, art, romance and sexuality, and children, likely spurred on by themes revolving around your friend group, community, and or ideals, in life. This could have presented as Big Mama or Papa Bear energy, creating a them versus us mentality surrounding children. There is also an air of perfectionism here. Perfectionism. It's always strong. Having too high of standards or expectations for what is having too high of standards or expectations for what it looks like and means to have fun is certainly anything but. So if the vacation or staycation hit home for you, it's possible that you tried too hard to enjoy yourself, thereby defeating the purpose of said vacation. The new moon itself is, of course, in Leo in your 6th house. So this is an invitation to contemplate your daily routines, your health, and your attitudes toward work and service. Additionally, the first big issue comes from Uranus and Taurus in the 3rd. How you process information, how you communicate with other people, possibly siblings and extended family. I'm definitely seeing the possibility of things not going according to plan, resulting in you flipping out. Let's watch out for that. It's okay for plans to change. It really is. Additionally, we can throw in the monkey wrench of being in one place and arguably more importantly, being comfortable. Especially during the past month or so, you've likely been more prone to overworking yourself, at least more so than usual, which does increase stress. Prolonged stress can lead to heart problems, as well as innumerable other conditions, both chronic and acute. Any new negative developments in health would necessarily lead to a breaking away from your job or whatever was making you overwork yourself. All of these areas in one form or another are being revisited, reworked, and reshaped to better fit the healthier lifestyle that you need to be implementing. Hopefully you are doing that. I really do hope that for you. But we also have the opposition between Venus and Neptune over your 1st and 7th houses. Again, angular houses. So this is going to be interesting. Over the next week or so, I won't lie, I think you guys have it the worst with this one. Your renewed sense of relationships, wanting to be the perfect partner and friend, all of that's very positive. However, there is a logical disconnectedness with Neptune in the 1st. A dreaminess and ethereal quality to your sense of self at this time. It's interesting because without even the slightest bit of 8th house action, there is an incredibly high sense of responsibility, duty, and expectation for you, especially in the context of relationships. And in this pursuit of fulfilling those obligations, in the pursuit of becoming that perfect partner or that perfect friend, it will be even easier for you to lose yourself than usual. And I shouldn't have to tell you how ridiculously unhealthy that is. The grounding for this struggle comes from Pluto in the 11th. So what we have is the senses of friendship, community, and ideals in life, goals and ideals. The trick here, in my opinion, is taking time to contemplate on the nature of the 7th house in general. It isn't just platonic relationships. It isn't just romantic relationships, and it isn't just marriage. It's partnerships. The lesson of the 7th house that I want you to leave this video hearing and internalizing is that every relationship, no matter the form, the nature of the relationship, it doesn't matter. Whatever relationship you are in with any other person or persons, at its base is a partnership of 2 or more equals. If you are investing more than the other party or parties is or are, then you can no longer afford to do that. Whatever you feel like you have to do to change that, talk with them, leave the relationship, whatever that step is, you cannot afford to stay in that situation as it is, because you are highly sensitive right now. So figure out, know, and remember your boundaries, Pisces, because you're going to need them, and be steadfast with them too. Don't cave to other people. Like, draw your line in the sand, and they'll pour concrete over it. Like, make sure it's there forever. But yeah, with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. Shush, made it to the end and now it's beeping. I hope you enjoyed the video. I do plan on doing one of these for each of the lunations. So I guess I'll see you again in a couple of weeks, if not before something else comes up. But yeah, again, this is Lance of the 8th house. You can find all of my social media links in the description box below. I am mostly active on TikTok, so feel free to follow me there, particularly if you have a TikTok account. But yeah, comment down below how this resonated, how the different transits have been presenting for you so far. And if you found me on TikTok, or if you feel the need to go follow me on TikTok or whatever, make sure you find my new moon posts, which went up today, along with this video. And, comment, like, show me some love over there too, because I'm still growing. But I will see you next time. Yeah, but also subscribe, like, subscribe, comment, all of the YouTube things. Do that, okay? But yeah, see you next time.